name is Douglas Ober. I'm a lecturer in the Department of History and in the Department of Asian Studies here at UBC, and I'm also a research associate in the Center for India and South Asia Research. So I have the great honor of getting to introduce our speaker tonight and welcoming all of you here. So welcome everyone to the 4th annual B.R. Ambedkar Memorial Lecture. So this event is really the product of a collaboration between multiple institutes and organizations across the Vancouver region. And I'd like to begin simply by thanking our sponsors, of which there are many different institutes that have pulled this all together. This includes the Institute of Asian Research here at UBC, the Department of Asian Studies also here at UBC, the Center for India and South Asia Research, the Robert H. N. Ho Family Foundation Program in Buddhism and Contemporary Society, the SFU Institute for the Humanities, the Hari Sharma Foundation, and the Chetna Association of Canada. There's also a few people that I'd like to point out in particular that have been working behind the scenes to really pull this event together and make it all happen. This includes Jay Birdi, Sarah Schneiderman, Anne Murphy, Akhil Jobanputra, and Jessica Main, some of whom are with us here today and some of whom aren't. I'd also like to add kind of one other somewhat housekeeping matter. For those of you that are interested in kind of attending any future events organized by the Center for India and South Asia Research, we do have a sign-in sheet at the back end of the room. If you could go ahead and sign that, there's a spot there if you'd like to include your email and be on our mailing list. We'd kind of greatly appreciate that. Now, before I introduce our speaker today, I wish to ask all of us to pause for a moment and consider the significance of where we are and the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam people. UBC has been here for a little over 100 years, but the Musqueam people have lived here for millennia, on this delta, on this land, on the mouth of the river. And it's on this space that they've passed on their culture, their history, and their traditions from one generation to the next. So we're thankful for the opportunity to study here, to work here, and to live here. And I ask you to recognize and acknowledge this past, but also the present and the importance of strengthening the relationship between our communities and the Musqueam people and other Indigenous communities here in Canada, and building more effective, meaningful collaborations. And I believe this also has a real relevance to both our speaker tonight and to Dr. Ambedkar, who championed the causes of marginalized and stigmatized communities both in India and beyond. So our speaker tonight is Dr. Suraj Yengde, an award-winning scholar and activist from India and the inaugural postdoctoral fellow at the Initiative for Institutional Anti-Racism and Accountability at the Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy at Harvard University's Kennedy School. Suraj completed his PhD at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa, and in doing so, he became the first Dalit to earn a PhD from an African university. He has published in the fields of caste, race, ethnicity studies, labor migration. He's currently the associate editor of Caste, a global journal on social exclusion, and he's working on a critical theory of Dalit and Black studies. Now, I myself first came to learn of Suraj's work through an edited collection that he published in 2018 with Anand Teltumble, entitled The Radical in Ambedkar, Critical Reflections. So I myself am a historian of Buddhism in India, and in particular of the Buddhist revival movements in colonial and early post-colonial India, of which Dr. Ambedkar played such a monumental role. So I turned to this book looking for a kind of different perspective into Ambedkar's life and legacy, and I was not disappointed. In reading the text, I was deeply impressed not only with the diverse and distinguished group of scholars which Suraj was able to pull together for this publication, but more importantly, the ways it encouraged us to rethink the popular image of Ambedkar as a Dalit icon, as the father of the Constitution, as the leader of India's Buddhist revival movement. It asked us to reconsider the ways, both explicit and subtle, in which Ambedkar's thought continued to have a real significance for those of us living in a 21st century world, both in India and beyond. Now, Suraj's recent work entitled Caste Matters, which you can see up here at the front, is not for sale, unfortunately. This was published with Penguin in 2019, was a really instant bestseller. It went to reprint within a week of its publication date, and it continues to top the charts on Amazon India. And I believe Suraj will probably be sharing with us some aspects of this work in his talk tonight. But beyond these important works, Suraj is an activist of great influence and a highly acclaimed public intellectual. He's been nominated for India's highest literary award by the Sahitya Academy, a kind of National Academy of Letters. He is a syndicated columnist at the Indian Express, the Huffington Post, the Mexican Times, the Globe and Post, and many others. And his writings have appeared in Al Jazeera, the Sunday World, the Wire, and the Mail and Guardian Africa. He's been featured in numerous television series by BBC and the Pulitzer Center's WGBH network in the United States. And he's also convener of the Dalit Film Festival and the India for Diversity movement, and a co-convener of the Dalit Black Lives Matter Symposium and the Dalit and Black Power movement. He's delivered over 200 lectures. In fact, he has a very busy schedule, so we should be very grateful to have him here today with us. These lectures have covered things on issues of casteism, racism, institutionalized discrimination, diversity, and inclusion. And finally, I should add, and I'm not sure how he finds the time to do all these things, he's also an attorney with qualifications from India and the UK, and he's served as a consultant to governments and NGOs on issues of human rights, social justice, and migration. So I'll simply leave it at that and state that we're all very honored and really excited to have you here with us today and in the next few days. So I hope you all will join me in welcoming Dr. Suraj Yengde.
Thank you so much, Doug. To very humbly acknowledge the indigenous people, we call them my pronunciation might be wrong, but Musqueam people, for their courage, forbearance, and generosity to grant this land to be us here. And I'm sure that I was hearing that this country and this university specifically is trying to grapple with the colonization of this land, and we are yet to come to terms with it. I pay my respects to the lives that have been lost in the process of these people on whose land we stand, and across the world, the indigenous as well as the oppressed communities who are fighting against the wretched oppression that has been imposed on them for reasons unknown to them. To begin with, I would like to acknowledge basically who really did, my dear brother Jay Birdi. Let's give it up to Jay for his courage, his leadership, and his persistence. For those of us who work in the movement, know of Jay not as a person who just does event, but who is with the movement for so long, and he has been continuously been doing this. And I think this speaks a lot that you all have packed the hall, and I'm grateful to you all for being here too. I would also like to mention Chetna Association, as well as the leadership of Chetna who is here, the community elders, as well as brothers and sisters beyond caste, as well as beyond region, race, and ethnicities. A very warm Jai Bhim to you. We are actually today, as I was coming into the airport, and people were very excited to know, and when Sardarji was the immigration guy, and he got instantly hooked to the whatever I was talking about, and then I was almost guessing that if he had no job hours, he would have joined me to come. That's how much enthusiasm, and I think that was a positive sign, because usually the immigration, the borderization of our lives has become so contentious that we feel unwanted and we feel almost untouchables of every other land we go into. That experience was a little bit heartwarming, and I would like to thank Sarah and Doug and the excellent team of many co-sponsors who have put together this event, and more specifically to run this fourth annual B.R. Ambedkar lecture series under the name of Ambedkar, happening every year, and with the continuity and with the same affection and love, deserves a second round of applause. So whoever is part of it, let's give it up in the name of Ambedkar, and as well as the people who are working to and for the movement. A few weeks ago, a 10-year-old boy and 12-year-old girl from Valmiki community, Manoj's son, and there was another girl in Madhya Pradesh in India, were on their way to meet their grandfather. And as it happens, due to lack of access to toilets, these two kids went for nature's call. They went for nature's call and their dead bodies came outside. This reminds me of an incident taking back us to Ambedkar's when he was going to meet his father, a subedar in an army, along with his siblings, and when gets down on railway station, and of course the tangewala, the carriage, inquires, and because looking at the posh clothes on this Mahar untouchables kids, he would not guess their caste, and so he happily gets the fare that they are offering, and then they are going together. And then in the meanwhile, Bhim is thirsty, and in the journey, the Tangewala discovers the caste of these three untouchable kids who are actually going to meet a subedar, again a reputed post. But in spite of the posh clothes they had, in spite of the jewelry they were sporting, the casteist eyes could not see the humanity beyond that and even under that. They were still termed untouchables. And Bhimrao, young Bhim, had to undergo that trauma, so much so that he remembers this in his worst fierce times when he is in Baroda, where he's heckled by the Parsi gundas, the thugs belonging to the Parsi community as well as the Hindu community, who, by the way, a Columbia graduate, a PhD, who's going to work in Sayaji Rao's government, that an untouchable cannot live in the same status as us. And even though he's paying same money in the hotel, his caste is unacceptable. And so Ambedkar is sobbing, and Ambedkar is in fear, and Ambedkar is thinking about the worth of his life. Coming here in 1916 and engaging with a galaxy of thinkers and philosophers, Golden Weiser, John Dewey, and when goes back is still an untouchable. And this episode, reminiscence with this time, Ambedkar was fortunate to not have witnessed the life of these kids belonging to the Valmikis. Ambedkar survived and ended up writing India's constitution. These two beautiful souls were not lucky enough. This is the kind of issue, this is the torment that we are facing today. Today in contemporary India, students across the campuses are undergoing brunt. One particular student whose mother is still waiting to hear that one day he will come back. We don't know what's happening with the abducted lives in India right now. And therefore, today and even yesterday and even tomorrow, the even is important because yet we might pass legislations, yet we might take our social movements to a phase, yet we might try to convince our family and societies, yet we try to transgress our own wretched minds. Still, the counting of Dalit dead bodies is not receding. It is but keep on increasing day by day. The statistics that we have to identify when people ask about the importance of caste, we have to look at the Human Development Index. What does it say? There are three important factors among many others that factor in. One is the level of income and poverty. Second is the idea of nutrition, as to how much nutrition. Third is education. If you look through these three variables, we will be able to identify the existence of caste in our everyday, day-to-day lives. And again, when I call upon caste issues, I also want to call upon the privileges of the caste people. So caste doesn't work only with the levy of Dalit suffering only, but the Brahmins and the dominant caste belonging to various other folds enjoying the privileges and enjoying the death as well as the rape of people who belong to the lower caste. So caste has to be put in relation. It has to be relative often. It cannot be one-sided discourse. And therefore, When we think and when we talk about poverty today, 1%, the top 1% of Indians own 60% of India's wealth. Digest that one more time. Top 1% own 60% of India's wealth. And we are talking about 1.4 billion people. A huge mass of land. Top 10 own 80% of India's wealth. Which means 89% of the people have to fight over 20% of India's resources. And when we don't have any other avenue to express our frustration, we go out after the most vulnerable, the most insecure person of our society, because that person is the easy target. You cannot go against the 1% because you know, there is a word in Hindi, aukat. You know you can't deal with the top 1% because if you are caste sensitive, you will ensure that the fight doesn't go against the top 1 or top 10%. It goes against the lower and people who are operating on the lowest level. And here's the fun fact. The 25 richest Indians, 25 richest Indian own 10% of India's GDP. 25 individuals owning of 10% of India's GDP. How does caste factor in? The richest of these people, 50% belong to Brahmin communities. Brahmins are 3% of India's population, yet own 50% of India's resources. And not only 50% of India's resources, they continue to be on the richest spectrum, meaning if you are richest, you are the worst exploiter of a society. That means 50% of the worst exploiters in this country belong to the 3% Brahmins. And if you add the Rajputs, they own 44% of India's wealth. And if you go slide down more according to the caste hierarchy and varnas, the kayasths who operate as the pet Brahmins in our societies, not having a full status of their own, trying to imagine their wet dreams of becoming a Brahmin one day, yet they are not Brahmins. Getting beaten up by Brahmins every now and then, and yet enjoying the privileges by oppressing someone else. This kind of dilemma of kayasths and again Banyas, they own 57% together. How do we account to the disparity? This disparity is an outcome of our caste blindedness when we have given safe passages to people who are actually utilizing the existing state as well as non-state resources, amassing the wealth for their own caste people. When we talk about neoliberal capitalism, the so-called promises of privatization as well as globalization that was supposed to offer a certain kind of freedom, it told us on our face that if we bring capitalism to you, you will be liberated. It told us with a sense of confidence that one day, capital will come to your rescue. What has happened? 92% of corporate board members belong to Brahmin and Banya communities in India. 92. Who is neoliberal regime supporting? What are they problematizing when they have to actually talk about Brahmins singularly owning 45% of corporate board seats when it comes to the capitalist or the global enterprises in India? And of course, the rest of the percentage goes to Banya. Here, the Khatris, the Kshatriyas, what we call, do not fall into the numbers. Scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, 25% of the population in total only has 3.5% of share in the corporate board memberships. A quarter of population, less than 4% sitting in important corporate board decisions. So your Twitters and your Facebooks and your Walmarts and all your fancy businesses from the West as well as the non-West capitalist enterprise operating in India has actually helped the casteist demagogues in India to utilize the neoliberal capitalism and the jargons of capitalist enterprise to further put down the people who should have instead fighting against the very order that has helped. And this is what talks about the loyalty of Brahmins. Brahmins have been the most disloyal citizens of India. They have never remained loyal to a country called India Republic or pre-Republic too. When the Mughals came, they rushed to them to become their special advisors. If Shivaji had his one part been having a mark on his body, it was a Brahmin who was fighting against Shivaji. And then when we talk about colonial regime, during the British times, the excellent advisors, the Brahmins, rushed to the English schools, went to the British, asked to establish and retain their supremacy by becoming again the special advisors. Pre-Mughal times, there was Adil Shahi, there was Delhi Sultanate. Pre that times, there was Chandragupta Maurya's kingdom. Who was the chief advisor of Chandragupta Maurya? Brahmin Kautilya, who drafted the vicious political treatise that India has known. Punitive measures against women, lower caste. He wrote Chanakya Niti. When British come, Brahmins sit on their laps to enjoy the breads and enjoy the sweats of the people who are actually working day and night into the field. In contemporary times, when neoliberalism comes as a new regime, a new Raj, Brahmins, again with the indicators that we have numbers, enjoying their unaccounted and unchallenged privilege in the society. When we talk about nutrition level is so deficient. The Dalit kids, 40% of Dalit kids do not have enough nutrition. They don't celebrate their 6th birthday. Lack of access to health is primary reasons for Dalit infant mortality. Anemia is caused due to the lack of hemoglobin in blood. 60.5% of Dalit kids fall under the category of anemia patients, whose result goes into death. And when we are trying to understand the lifestyle of these people, we have to also focus on what is happening on the other side of the spectrum. What is happening to the people who are belonging to the Savarna caste or the twice born castes? How are they performing in this spectrum? Let's look at the richest Indians and the percentage of them in these categories. Only 5% of scheduled tribes fall into the category of richest Indians. Now you have to compare that 5% with the amount of the total general ratio. The policymakers in India are very funny sometimes. To make them feel good, they play around these variables. They have declared that 5% of Adivasis fall into the top richest category of all the Indians. And if you ask for evidence, it's a very scathing criticisms that you are given. They say you don't ask for the top 1%. But now you want to ask for the scheduled tribes, so asking who claim to be the 5% top richest Indians. What is happening, Gary? The legitimization of thuggery. You are using the marginalized names, their paltry contribution or representation into certain as a tokenized form of presence to parade this as a representative of an entire community. And therefore, it is here where the challenge comes, where in contemporary times, the Dalit or Adivasis are becoming the tokens at the hands of dominant Hindutva regime. They neutralize the oppression upon rest of the masses. Today, when we talk about the third variable, the education sector, this is more appalling. Dalit children, the parents are excited that their kid will go and one day become like Baba Sahib. Having Ambedkar as an inspiration is giving them no option but to send their children to primary school. And we all know, if you are working as a landless laborer, if your child is going to school, that one helping hand is not there with you, who could have made at least 10-15 rupees of the whole day's labor. Yet, Dalit parents are sacrificing that 10-15 rupees of whatever they have and sending their children to schools. 88% of scheduled caste enrollment is there in primary schools. 88. As they go to what we call higher or secondary medium, their percentage declines to 66%. And then when we go to the higher education, what we call colleges or diplomas, they are merely 11%. And how many of them pass out? Less than 5%. Less than 5% Dalit graduates this country is producing. And we all know what's happening there. 88 to less than 5%. Where are these kids? Where are these educated? Where are this Indian youth who should have been part into the project of nation building? The vicious casteist Brahminical regime is making sure that they don't access the same amount of education. So there is a denigration to their status. They are called down as inferiors. They are called down as meritless people. They are told repeatedly that you are here not because of your worth, not because of your interest, not because of your encouraging enthusiasm to learn something more. You are here merely because you were beneficiary of reservation. You have no worth in the society, you as an equal citizen. A citizen is someone who participates in a democracy as an equal citizen. Here, an unequal citizenship is prioritized. An unequal citizenship of Dalits is held as a premium because Dalits are yet not full Indians for these casteist bigots. Dalits have to constantly prove their nationalism every second day. If I am protesting, I have to make sure I say repeatedly that India is my country. Because the tag of anti-national is slapped on my face since I am born. 41% of the Indian Dalits are lost in prison. It is no accident. And if you look at Muslims as well as Adivasis, it covers the whole spectrum. Being a Dalit is being a criminal in society. And to escape the criminality heaped upon you, you have to constantly dance and negotiate your status as fellow citizen. Of these 5% Dalit graduates, very few make it into the profession that they so desperately want. The system is not there to assimilate. The system exists there to exclude. And how do they do that? If you go to workplace, if you try to talk to your colleagues on equal plane, there are casteist taunts and remarks passed upon you. They don't acknowledge your presence as equal. They don't celebrate your festivals. They don't talk good about your ancestors. They don't praise Ambedkar. They always make sure you are the worthless shit that you have come from, and this recognition is given to you by every other blind signifiers that you are operating in as a colleague or otherwise in the society. And so what does a Dalit do? A Dalit has two options. Assimilate on their rules or die. The Dalit suicide rates is at an alarming rate. Because you cannot cope up the subordinate humiliating position. But the Dalits who chose the other option where I will go and I will try to convince these people, or what I will do is I will make sure that my identity will never come in front of whatever I am saying. So a casteist bigot will always use his or her religion to parade his or her supremacy, where a Dalit, even if he is a fellow colleague, a fellow equal citizen of that society, of that campus or of that workplace, has to inherently adopt and aspire for his secondary position. If you claim your equal citizenship, the entire workplace gangs up against you. That's what happened in IIT Kanpur. A professor, Rohit Sardela, he was a graduate of IIT Kanpur himself, a PhD holder himself. Goes and gets into the workplace, gets a faculty position, but his casteist colleagues challenge him by saying that this guy, who is our colleague now, doesn't have merit. And how he has his thesis plagiarized. The same institution that granted him PhD 1 year ago, actually his colleagues now come back after him to say that your thesis is a plagiarized. Instead of engaging in that conversation as to how much this has happened, this goes to the board. That's how caste system operates. it doesn't end up on a lower level. The highest authority takes in. And they want to make sure that they investigate this cause. Professor Sardella is undergoing torments for more than a year. A young child, his wife, who is again intercaste marriage, is undergoing a lot of pressures. Now, a fellow faculty who has passed from the same institution is not willing to acknowledge his merit. How much of a vicious casteism can it exist where you are not trusting your own children? And that's why the Dalit blood is most feared blood. The concept of love marriage. They don't want Dalits to be mixing their blood with your daughters or with your sons, because they know your blood is an impure, filthy blood, full of malice of generations and generations of caste. Dalit is a blood that will have the potential to purify your wretched and tormented souls. It is the sadism that one is not willing to accept the rational humanity of other Dalits, that an inter-caste marriage becomes a moment of a contentious violence and pogroms in an entire district. Today, wherever we aspire or wherever we cast our gaze, one thing that comes out is this society is making sure that Dalits remain inferior in their mind and in their action. If they see a Dalit who is asserting himself, who is calling out his ancestors and believing in his own history, is the most unacceptable Dalit for the society. Whereas a Buddha Brahmin becomes accepted as a revered priest. We have a saying, if you are a failed Brahmin, you can become a revered priest in a big temple. But even if you are a successful Dalit, you will still be a failed Brahmin. The narratives of violence keep on changing. Violence remains the common factor. Every day, 3 Dalit women are raped. Every day, 2 Dalits die. Every week, 5 Dalit houses are burnt. This is the gory statistics that this regime has produced. And any political dispensation has not had the courage to deal with it upfront. The autonomous Dalit voices who want to come and fight on their own are treated and told as the corrupted people of the society. Best example is of course often accused to Mayawati. You talk about Mayawati, the second thing people tell you in response is, oh, a corrupt politician. Not even allowing us to express our full sentiments and emotions about this figure. Even before we own our own kinds, they want you to disown your own kinds. And by doing that, what they do is they create divisions in the forging unity of Dalits. Wherever the caste of Brahmin or Brahminism has gone, they have made sure that the idea of merit and meritocracy retains. And that has happened across the board, and even in these societies, wherever we see, especially in America, where they become the proponents of the filthy logic of meritocracy. When we talk about the issue of caste, caste relies on 2 things, among many other things, but 2 things. One is the concept of purity or pollution, and second is the material. The concept of purity and pollution animates through various cultural agencies. Religion becomes one of the primary factors that tells you how to treat other person. If a religion treats and teaches you to discriminate other religion, this religion is actually deserving to be died for so long. It continues to remain alive. And I think that's the failure of modern civilization, which still continues to tolerate such wretched system operating as a religion in our society. The second, question of land. Land is a central aspect in granting the aggressive status to anybody. The Jats, for example, the Shudras, they were Shudras, lower caste people, had a lower status in the society. After getting an access to a religion that granted them equal access, because of the access and ownership of land, become the next Brahmins of a Sikh society. Similar happens with other Shudra communities of India, go Marathas or any other communities across the board. They become the neo-Brahmins, neo-Kshatriyas and neo-Banyas of our society. The aspirants, they're always in the waiting to be the next. Lack of human dignity is among these people, who don't see themselves as equal citizens but always want to make sure you are superior. Because if you establish your superiority, you make sure someone is lower to you. And if you want someone lower to you, you want a slave. Slavery in proper action, with legal codes authorized by religion. Caste has retained its order across religion. The attacks that we see in Muslims, against Muslims, are against the lower caste Muslims of their society. It is not the elite Muslims who are operating, who have been always on the monarchical or the higher pedestal of society, who are facing the wrath of society. No. It is the poor, converted Dalit or lower caste Muslims who go into Islam to find a refuge. These are the people who are getting attacked. And why are they getting attacked? Because the Brahminical regime wants untouchables under their order. How dare you leave us and went to Islam? That's the beef that is operating. And similar instances we see happening against Christians. When they say there is an attack against Christians, it's a very misnomer, it's a euphemistic at its worst. 80% of Indian Christians are Dalits. So when you say it is an attack against Christians, who are you talking about? You are talking about the Dalit converts who are Christians. But by not mentioning that, you make sure Brahminical order retains. And how do you retain Brahminical order in a civil society regime? You talk about issues like secularism. You talk about issues like communalism. You talk about issues like classism. You talk about issues like regionalism. Yet, you will not talk about issues that is at the center of this operation, which is caste. The moment you evade or you liberalize caste, you became the perpetrator of worst part of casteism. And so it's a signal to all to take into cognizance how caste is animating our discourse. Only 9% Dalits in India own land. Of that land, you have to categorize into, there is a quality land, quality 1, quality 2, quality 3. They have a different economic measures or various terminologies that identify with what kind of land you have. Some land which produces a lot of yield and some land which is barren. On the barren side of land, Dalits are the most owners of that kind of land. 83% of India's landless laborers are Dalits. When you talk about landlessness in a feudal society, you are talking about perpetual enslavement. 83% of the Dalits in rural areas are slaves of the land-owning castes. And if you actually divide into various district-wise data, 7 major districts in India, 90% of the Dalits are landless. All India level data goes to 71%. If 71% Dalits are landless, where do they go? They turn out to find new employment, and thus they go to urban areas. They migrate. They migrate trying to find no networks, no connections, nobody who they know. They just show up on a railway station trying to find the next good job or trying to find wherever they can go and survive. They have their kids who are growing, and these people become the urban beggars of our society. The migrant Dalits who go to urban areas are the people who are begging on streets. Add to that now the Adivasi population. Various castes among Dalits perform various kinds of jobs. The entertainment, the circus that we see is belonging to a specific caste of that society. Indian caste system has made sure Dalits remain the beggars of this society. And they always want you to be beggars, be it a question of reservation or be it the question of economism. They want you to be on the receiving end. They want you to go and beg. But we are now asking to subvert that. We don't want to beg. We don't even want to petition. We tried for 70 years. Now we want to try something else. And we would like to challenge and question the overarching dominance of minority communities of India. How the hell a 3% Brahmin community owns 50% of India's resources? Unless we address that question, we will not be able to address the question of Dalits or Adivasis operating on a different spectrum. Because inequality, as I said, is relative. But to hide their own privileges, Brahmins make everyone else Hindus. Because if you make everyone else Hindus, you will not be able to tell that you are a Brahmin sitting on 50% of the wealth. This is the crooked strategy that they have deployed. 1985, 45% of the wealth was belonging to the billion class. 2013, it has become to 65%. It's a study by Paris School of Economics. Thomas Piketty's team had done this research. When we see the question of land intertwined with the notion of poverty and as well as caste, people will want to engage with the question of land through the issue of class. And this is a message to the Brahmin Marxists who try to teach the subalterns about the notion of the imported theories of Frankfurt School or the global leftism. Yet their siblings continue to rape us, continue to mutilate us, continue to enjoy the privileges of their unworked wealth. It is the Shudras, it is the Dalits, it is the Adivasi who are cultivating, who are producing, who are contributing into nation's wealth. But it is the Brahmin-run banks, Brahmin-run public sector unions and companies who are actually giving the loans of these hardworking people to these thugs of our society who are taking the wealth and showing the middle finger to India and just coughing off. And yet, we still tend to talk about the notion only of Hindutva, when we will be talking the idea of caste that operates in making of every Hindutva. We are unable to loosen our own desires that tend to tell us that the real problem doesn't lie in the acrobatics of religion versus religion. It was never a problem. Religion in India is not a significant problem. If you add caste to that, it becomes a problem. And therefore, within the Sikh society, you see divisions happening according to various Ramgadiyas or the Ravidasis and various societies. Because it is the aspiration of the subaltern to be claiming his equality. Every religion in India is not offering that equality. Because of the lack of egalitarian ethos. How will you have egalitarian ethos when your ancestors have told you to enjoy someone else's hard work? Your ancestors have tutored you to go somebody else's works, loot that and enjoy your life. That's what caste system has done to the upper caste sensibilities of this country. The idea of hard work doesn't exist. Exploiting someone else's wealth depends on this mechanics of the caste system. When we talk about the financial assets, what are the financial assets that belong to the Dalit community? Because there is oft repeated instances that Dalits are now well off. You must be hearing the defenses from this kind of people who constantly tell that Dalits are now well done, now they don't need reservation. They don't need any kind of resources in this society because you know what, they are now self-satisfied. Look at that Dalit. They will show you two figures, me and someone else, and say Dalits don't need reservation, they have made it here. Dalits only own 9% of the whole financial assets of the country. Only 9. That is an alarming figure. Dalits are 18% of India's population. And when it comes to owning of financial assets, and we are talking about assets, the Savarna, the Brahmins, the Kshatriya as well as the Baniya community, which is close to 21% of the population, owns 48% of the country's financial assets. And then if you talk about there is also in India, there's a funny enough, when they talk about financial assets, they also count gold. How much of a gold is owned? Because gold, we all know, is a strong, solid currency. In all these dialogues, religious institutions get a green flag. They don't tend to be accounted in all of this malice. How many temples in India, how many gurudwaras in India, how many mosques in India, how many viharas in India are sitting on the wealth that should be distributed to society for the most poorest and most needed? Does any religious institution take it upon themselves that every year we will have this much of a turnover and whatever money will come, because Mahatma Phule himself told this is the money of the poor working class people, the farmers, the peasants who work hard and bring the money into the temple just because they have the belief in the system. And once the Brahmin who works nothing, and he uses the word the pot-bellied Brahmin, uses the wealth of working class people to feed his own kinds. This debate doesn't occur into progressive minds. Instead, the charitable instincts take place, where they say, we build a hospital for you, we build schools for you, and yet we will charge fees for you. Privatization of every other sector has happened. Temple is the first privatized sector that has happened way before any other privatization in this country. So when we talk about privatization, why not also pay attention to the religious organization as well as socio-religious groups who are actually funding such kind of activities for them to perpetuate caste-based discriminations or any kinds of fascist violence that we have in the society. Privatization of education, privatization of airports. You all know that now, privatization of railway stations. Everything, when it is privatized, it is actually Brahminized. It is to the Brahmins and Baniyas that this wealth is given. So in India, the idea of privatization works very well because the people who should question this are the people themselves who are fighting against it. It's a very critical space. The Brahmins here and Brahmins there. The dominant caste here and dominant caste there. Right and left. Whereas the people who are on the larger spectrum, the lower caste or the so-called subaltern groups, they don't even form the part of conversation that is taking place on a higher level. So one might go to World Social Forum and talk about the social movement activities, and yet there will be another conservative sitting in some temple or sitting in some religious organization or some heading some right-wing group across wherever part of the world they are, yet they will talk about the same thesis. Language is different, but the premise is the same. Observe it very closely. That's why I call upon the Brahmins to be the cultural suicide bombers of this society. You can't just be the participant, you can't just be the supporters, you can't just be the people who are in solidarity. You gotta be the cultural suicide bomber, and unless and until you do that, you are the more perpetrator of casteism upon us as much as the people who is committing crimes and rapes upon us. There is no difference between you and the others. The people need to take the mantle. They cannot offer us symbolic as well as vocabularies that will help us satisfy our healing moment for those temporary times. We need a long-term solutions. As and when we talk about caste becoming an issue, people always make sure caste doesn't become an issue. You talk to any liberal, any radical, any progressive, and talk to on their face, do this test. Hey, what do you think about caste? Just ask this. Of all the things. Hear the response. Document it. Look at critically how they will evade it. Even in their acknowledgement, they will evade it. Now, you know it's a problem. But it's changing. Changing for who? You, your siblings, who made it here in Canada or in America, or who are actually having the ownership of major companies in India? No. You know, they had a Dalit chief minister. When? 10 years ago? And when we are talking about her, you are telling her she's corrupt in the second breath. Oh no, you know what? Caste was a thing of the past. Now it doesn't operate in a similar way. Now it has changed. What does that mean? Has that changed the life of Dalits or the Adivasis operating on a receiving end? Has it made a change to the 3 Dalit women? They are still raped every day in the society. And the people who stand defensive to the caste are the people who are participating in the rapes of Dalit women that are happening in this country. Until and unless this becomes part of our everyday dialogue, caste is a footnote to every other problem that we have in India. Caste should be the primary introductory intervention in whatever we do in India. You will talk about issues affecting Kashmiris. You will talk about the issues affecting Muslims. You will talk about the issues affecting Sikhs. You will talk about the issues affecting Dalits. Then Adivasis. Then, because it has become almost like a carnival of these many solidarity movements. Why not talk about Dalit issues as you talk about Kashmir issues? Why not talk about Dalit issues as you talk about the issues affecting Muslims or Sikhs or other castes or other groups in India? Whatever problems we have that affects health, that affects every other sector of Indian society, caste plays a primary role, and we need to apply the anti-caste lens to understand the sensitivity of this issue. Right now, we have Brahminical lens. And through that, we tend to theorize the problems of India's society. And if you are using the Brahminical lens to theorize the problem of society, you will provide answers that are temporary for that moment only. That will not be a structural time change. It will be a feel-good conversation. It will be like a therapy discussion of 1 hour. You step out of it, miseries will fall down back upon you. Because the structures have not been shaken. There are 2 theories that constantly keep on telling the prevalence and persistence of caste. One is the violence, and second is the defense. Violence against the caste bodies, and it is defense of the privileged caste bodies. People today who are enjoying the benefits of caste system present themselves as the victims of this caste system. How ironic of this. You will see many dominant caste kids crying and lamenting that because of reservation they couldn't get the seats in specific institution. That means they are afraid of less than 5% Dalit graduates who barely make it to the university, and they put the entire blame on Dalits. So Dalits still have to bear the brunt of a failed Brahmin on their own shoulders. If you are not smart enough, it is not up to the Dalits that you have to blame. It is up to the Brahmins who are taking your seats, you should blame. This conversation doesn't become part of our own thinking too. People come with a jaundiced mind to talk about caste. Caste should become a primary nexus of all the meeting points in India. Because even before every other religion that existed in India, caste still was there and caste still is here. One of the reasons why do we have 8 different goddamn religions in India? Why do we need so many religions in India? And we have very much regional religions also. You have in Karnataka the Basava religion. You can go to Maharashtra, there is another saint religion. We have various religions. Why do we need so many religions? Because caste had made sure that it will penetrate into every other religion that promised an escape from it. Be it Sikhism, be it Islam, Parsis, and every other societies that we have in India. Unless and until we address this issue in our current generation, our forthcoming generations will again fear that they will have to face a huge snowball effect of this caste. And the people who belong to the dominant caste, it is upon their, where they need to take the responsibility of dismantling it. Because your existence in a society and not being active and sensitive about caste means you are participating into a caste. And this problem is going to continue for the next generation. Many parents tell me, I did not bring up my child with any caste-based sensibilities. And so what? Did caste go away just by like that? By you not telling them? They will go to colleges, they will go to universities, they will meet other caste people where this conversation is bound to come. And then what? You have not prepared your child. They are going to blame you for the rest of your life for not equipping them to face this wrath. So person belong to any caste. And I recall the progressive Brahmins who were part of Phule's and Ambedkar's movement, who took upon fellow Brahmins to fight against the scourge of caste. They said, this system is wrong, we are going to fight against our own siblings. And people ask me, where should I begin my caste fight? It begins in your house with your mother and father, your sister and brother and families. You have to be courageous enough to fight against them. If you are not willing to fight against them, then your fight against caste merely becomes a sentimental rhetoric, where you will come, have 2-3 samosas in our normal conversations and go back home. Go back to your, again, enjoying your privileges of that. You should not be resting unless each person who is on the lowest order is liberated. And many people today talk about the notion of capitalism that is operating in our society. They say capitalism is going to liberate the people. If you look at the representation of self-employment among Dalits, even though Dalits, they are skillful, they are having craft, they can go and they are versatile people, they can work in various vocations if they are put into. Yet the self-employment rate is less than 20%. They don't get capital. They don't get support to start the business. Even if they start, there is no network that is going to help to run the business. And for God forbid, if the person knows, if the society comes to know that this business belongs to a Dalit, you will face negative loss, not just loss, negative loss. And that has been the experiences across the board. And so when we are talking about this, sorry, I said less than 20, less than 40, 37% of Dalits are self-employed. When we talk about the wage laborers, there are 2 categories. One is wage laborer. Dalits constitute the highest number of wage laborers because they have nowhere else to go. And wage labor, you know, is a job which is relying on everyday job. If you get a job, you are happy. If you don't, then you go home. Wage labor is the most sensitive. This is what the neoliberal capitalism has managed to do. It created contractorship. And the contractor made sure that you work more hours and you will get same money. Going back to the industrial eras. This was already done in India. Neoliberalism did not have to teach us. We were already contractualizing this. We already, in our own farms, we already had what we call various languages, a person who was controlling his 90, 30, 40, 50 number of peasants. The landowner was always away, was not there in direct contact. There was a middleman who would exploit. There were various names, Jagirdar or whatever names they had. They would fight with them, they would get the wealth and the money would go. We have been practicing this for so long. So don't teach us about contractual relationship, any Indian casteist Jat or Maratha or this landowning caste will tell us. We have gotten an excellent degree in practicing exploitation of others' labor. We are just waiting for the person to produce a surplus. The day or the moment they produce surplus, you will ensure that surplus is not only taken, but the quality and dignity of that labor is denigrated. Because if you deny the agency of that labor, you will successfully keep the labor hanging. And the labor will not protest. The labor will not participate because he or she will still continue to believe that this system has made sure that I am not a person with qualities. I am a person who is just here because someone else is more greater than me. I will just do my job. And what is your job? Just go from one conveyor belt to the other belt. Don't aspire for the bigger. And that is what happened. A talented Dalit will still be confined to his inferiorities that has been given by Brahminical regime. Even though you have a degree, you have the quality, you have the experience, you are constantly told, don't aspire to be the next top guy in the business chain. You still be the secondary. As a closing point, I would like you to reflect on this various issues that are facing in our front. Caste issue is also very much relevant to Canada as much as it is relevant to every other society that Indian has migrated. But also non-Indian societies have the caste problems. Caste is not unique only to the Hindu regime or the various Indo-centric religion regime. Caste in its various forms has operated in various societies. That doesn't give the Hindus a free pass to say, see, we are not the only one who has practiced discrimination. They will feel good because we have people with a very shallow minds. Caste is a global struggle. More than 300 million people face the wrath of caste and untouchability. one America equivalent of an entire mass is undergoing this humiliating treatment. And if we live to these humiliations, rapes, murders, pillages of this society, we are committing the same crimes by remaining absent from that active conversations and collaboration. So wherever South Asia studies or whichever studies discipline or whichever organization they are, we should try to make a conversation, frank conversation about how caste is interpreting the discourses. How much of Dalit or Adivasi students constitute in the Indian student intakes in UBC, in Montreal, in McGill, or Harvard? We are doing at Harvard now. Because this is the question that will clear the air that people have been gasping, because they use the post-colonial lens to tell us, you know what, the white man and white woman were a problem. Only? Or you were also complicit in that. They will not talk about their own ancestors being complicit in stretch of the British colonial or any other regime. And every society that is post-colonial, quote-unquote, had their own Brahmins of society as well as their own Dalits. The Brahmins of society used and sold the Dalits of their each society, be it Africa or be it Latin America. The lower caste or the subaltern caste continue to suffer the brunt. When the colonial armies or colonial regime went, these people were still living in safe and secure places. The condition of Dalits, what Ambedkar said, that the masters, the colonial masters will go, but the native masters will still be there. We will still remain the slaves of this society, and we cannot afford to leave the society. At least in my lifetime, I will make sure that not only my slavery, but the slavery of other oppressed people across the world is created when we will talk to each other on the terms of our experiences. And I really hope the Ambedkarite group here makes contact with the oppressed population here in this country and try to educate each other, try to learn from each other, and try to see about the survival tactics. How did they fought, and how can we create a cohesive world for all? Unless we make the aggressor on defensive. We have to put the person who is committing crime upon us defensive in the first instance, rather being defensive on ourselves at the first. Because when we become defensive, we become responsible for whatever actions we do. Now it is about time we turn the order. Like Marx turned Hegel upside down, Franz Fanon turned Marx upside down, Ambedkar turned all of them upside down and brought to us a new phenomena through the language of Buddhism, talking about egalitarian ethos that transcended every other boundaries. Gave that nectar that was more radical, that was not meditative only. Ambedkar's Buddha is a social revolutionary who is walking, who is spreading the message, and who is actually challenging the intellectual Brahmins to fight intellectually. How much can you deal and how much can you talk about the egalitarianism and the absence thereof? And therefore, when we talk about Baba Saheb Ambedkar or the various varieties of thoughts that he has put forward, we have to be also cognizant about the internal contradictions that appear within forging Dalit as well as other caste solidarities. It has to be not a purposeful solidarity, but it has to be an organic solidarity with a devoted and committed purpose that I love you as a fellow citizen of whatever country you are or whatever humanity you belong to. The struggle of Dalits need not be only hetero-patriarchal struggle. It has to transcend the sexualities. We have to take the LGBTQ community, the trans people, to be part of the struggle. And unless this broad-based alliance become part of informing a caste-based solidarity, Dalit lives will not continue to matter. And therefore, when we talk about Dalit lives matter, it has to be not only Dalits, but every other oppressed life that has been oppressed across various regions and across various reasons. But yes, the scourge of Dalits has been on the brunt. They have carrying all of these burdens for so long. So when Dalits speak, they will speak for themselves, but also they will make sure other voices are represented in their echoes. And when time comes, they will step aside and give chances for all other marginalized groups in forging a common unity against this wretched regime. Thank you.
So my name is Anne Murphy. I'm the director of CSAR, the Center for Indian South Asia Research. So I'm here to moderate the questions. So
I am Aman. So I am quite interested on how you kind of deconstructed the entire situation. So I have three variables in my mind, which is colonization, capitalism, And in the recent elections, you see this mobilization or re-emergence of a forward caste vote bank.
Yeah.
So how do you see the interaction of these three variables going forward? Because it's quite critical, or quite like against the grain of what you're trying to achieve or articulate.
Okay.
Want to respond to that?
Okay, I can respond. Yeah. What's your name? Sorry. No, what's your name? Aman. Thank you. I mean, and that's, I think we need to. That's what I was trying to also break as to how these three regimes have. Actually they have used various lenses depending upon situation just to adjust. So when you talk about caste, the capitalist kind of fragmentations or superstructure takes place, or if you talk about capitalism, the other regional kind of mobilization. And I think this has to do with, people have tried to find excuses to, excuses to grant a certain legitimacy to, let's say, I think, and I believe in what, actually Ambedkar's plan was, which was through Republican Party of India, and of course his Labour Party as well as Scheduled Caste Federation, which was not actually a caste party, it was anti-caste party. But the Congress and other regimes learned from Ambedkar's effort and subverted that to make their own ideas into casteist party. Because I think that was one of the successes of Congress, and now we see the failure coming out. And Congress and BJP both are, Ambedkar would say, left and right hand side of the same body. And to add to that, I will add the left party also is the third hand if there is one. Because they will still, for example, the forward caste or the non-Brahmin caste who continue to, frame. And I think that is their miseducation and undereducation, especially the Shudras or the, because they were targeted, they were given land. During colonial times, these castes were given land. After colonial times, Congress strengthened them more. Because the primary fear for Congress or any other casteist regime was the rise of Ambedkarite consciousness among all the masses. And when it's an Ambedkarite consciousness, it is actually trying to challenge the structure whichever they are living in. So what they did was, so that the untouchable consciousness remain in control, they made sure the local landlords or the local dominant caste people, because in every village there is specific caste which is dominating, they granted them lands enormously. And after granting them lands, in short time, they politicized them. They brought them into political equations. And that's why we see today many regional parties, erstwhile it was Congress's hegemony. But right now, in every region, in every landlord castes or, the landowning caste belong to Congress or any other parties. So, if you have to refute that, one of the things we have to tell the forward caste is that they are still dependent. They are not independent. By controlling untouchable doesn't mean you are superior. You are still lower. You don't have access to wealth, because that's why we have reservation arguments that people are like Jats as well as the people in Patels in Gujarat and Marathas, and it's gonna go because they don't see them in the positions. But also second thing is they see more Dalits in the positions. That's the jealousy. That's the insecurity to see how the hell does Dalit from this village is now becoming an officer in certain, So they see these equations playing very well, and they don't want it to work in, because for them development of Dalit goes against their own development. Because if you don't have untouchables, why do we need India? India needs untouchables to survive. The day India untouchables will cease, who will be the next untouchable? Jats or the dominant caste will say, we don't want to be. And that's why there's this kind of constant strength and struggle of each caste to strengthen its own purchase has become a problem. In the capitalist regime, when we talk about this, there has not been any significant change among the forward castes. We just have to look at the statistics. In the OBCs, they are one of the first performing groups. But what happens is, among the OBCs, there is an upper OBC who is always playing the card of OBC, but letting other, because OBC has more than 3,500 castes, the backward classes people. And the backward classes people are having constant struggle with the dominant, regime. And I think that is where we need to break. And that is where we need to, create a kind of a osmosis of the lower caste groups. And I think Kanchiram did it very well. After Ambedkar, it was only Kanchiram who could bring this formula into action, where he said, we are 85% and we will need 85% of the share, period. Don't talk to me more. जितनी संख्या, जिसकी जितनी संख्या भारी, उसकी उतनी भागीदारी और हिस्सेदारी, whatever he called. And I think that was a very classic plan. And that gave many people a critical caste consciousness. People started questioning this hegemony and dominance. And even today, the people who are the forward caste or the Shudras equivalent, they know that they are lower, but they're happy that Dalits are still lower than them. But now what happens is, in the one generation, Dalits are actually progressing compared to them. And now they cannot see this. And now they are trying to find various reasons to put down Dalits. And that's what they were one of the active participants in making sure the protection against the Atrocities Act, POA Act, the SC/ST Act, they made sure that this was loosened so that more crimes could be committed. And I think it's a space where we need to think, how do we get all the oppressed groups in the society in one conversation? Because again, I told and I made this statement, I said, even Brahmins are oppressed by dominant caste Brahmins. But that Brahmin will not see his pain like the Shudra will not see his pain as equivalent. But you are suffering. You cannot marry who you want to marry. And there is still a problem. And I think we need to educate this undereducated people who are just, wandering about like a headless chicken around and trying to provide their own new agency without them having any agency.
Hi, thank you for your talk. That was absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
I'm Vajiha. I'm a PhD student here. Throughout your talk, I could sense this desire around national belonging. You kept talking about nation building, how we should love each other as citizens. And yet you also talked about how the only place that is given to marginalized in the nation is that of exile. And as you said that, I was immediately thinking about also Hannah Arendt as she talks about the Jewish question that was addressed. And she talks about how the only place that is given to the marginalized is that of exile or forcible assimilation. That's what you said. So do you think there's a need to deconstruct the very idea of nation and nationalism?
Beautiful. Yes.
We'll take one more
Sure.
and then we'll move on to the next. So you're next and then next round.
Hi, thanks for your talk. My name is Sujata. My question is about how do you see in your scheme of things the movement that happened in, let's say, Tamil Nadu, where, the Periyar Ramaswamy EBR movement, which actually, the indicators, I believe, are very good in Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
And Tamil Nadu is one of the states where reservation, you can argue that reservation has achieved its end in the sense that the people who occupy the positions don't come out of reservations.
That's right.
So how do you see that?
That's right. You mean the reservations are continue to be used by the same...
No. I mean that people who occupy positions are from the lower sections.
That's right.
For whom all these would have been denied, but who have made it in their own right.
That's right.
Directors of many institutes have not come along the reservation lines.
That's right.
But they would be from the lower sections of society.
Okay. So how do we place? So, Vijita, thank you for that question. It is very important if we look at the idea of nation construction and nation building through the lens or experiences rather of Dalits. Where do they fit? Does nation exist for them? And if it does, how it is formed? Is it a geographical entity, or Benedict Anderson say, is it imagined entity, or is it actually a historical entity? And I think for Dalits, it's a historical construction. Because that's what belongs to them. The contemporary times might not be sympathetic to them, but historically, that is how it has been manifested, right? And that's why we talk about the Dalits being, the original inhabitants of Harappa's civilization, right? And we created these innovations. And then Aryas, the Brahmins and the dominant caste came and, gave their caste codes to us. When nation is debated in Indian context, Dalits have very interestingly, although Dalit Panthers were saying, how about Dalitstan? Let us think about a possibility of our own country and, but again, I think because of lack of international support and lack of internationalism that has happened, there is not much of a purchase to that idea. But Ambedkar talked about separate settlement. It's a very interesting logic. Nation within nation. Well, he said because Dalits are minorities in every villages, and because the people who are dominant, they have more numbers, they will easily oppress. How about we do this? Get the Dalits and get their own separate settlement. So they are majority. If you want to fight, let there be equal numbers. The castes are cowards. They come in mobs to beat one Dalit or one family. And these cowards kind of parade their, zealot nationalism, because they equate nationalism with this. And therefore, the nationalism in India right now is a Brahmin, or what I call Manu-centered nationalism. And there is no, I'm actually trying to write one piece on this. I was thinking that the democracy that exists in India is actually not part of the nation building. Because when you are building a nation, you don't need democracy to operate. You need a certain kind of democratic autocracy. Meaning you need people who will just blindly follow and not participate into democratic expressions of rights. And how does this happen? You make the issue of cow, or you make various issues of lynching against Muslims, or you make various issues against this. What happens is, this mobs becomes a democratic participant of autocracy. It is not actually participating in change for certain goods. It is just becoming a peddler. But yet they are democratic citizens. Yet they are exercising democracy, whatever right it may belong to. And so people have confused this because they immediately said this is a fascist regime. How do you mention it a fascist regime without accounting to this democratic participation? There is a very serious theoretical confusion that many people have. And for Dalits, the nation, or whatever nation means, is not actually the nation. For example, they imagine the nation of Ashoka's time. It's not the expanse, it's about the quality of life. I think that's very important. And that's why nation is very central to whatever you do, because politically you are relevant. If you are not political subjects, then you become nobody. And for Dalits, it's very important that they remain politically active. That's why you see they are protesting and all. The day Dalits will lose the hopes in political democracy, India will crumble into pieces. We will have civil wars. We will have repeated civil war. We will not stop. But they have still hold on, and what I call it is because of Dalit love. Dalits have not given the capacity to love. The day they will stop loving other human beings, they will start taking arms, and why are they not doing it? It's not because of they are cowards or something. They are still believing in the promises. But that should not come as a permission for the oppressor to oppress them. It's a slow warning. They should take that into mind, because one day or the other this is going to change. And that's why we are trying to believe, we are trying to propagate the message of creating harmony amongst us. This is gone up to on the shoulders of Dalits, that we are actually telling them, let this not happen to you. We are anyway dying. And we are making sure that dignities remain there. But the day it will go above us, we'll make sure that you will also come with us in the graveyard. And it has to be a fight of equality, in death as well as in life. But this constant educational as well as cultural, political engagements that are happening on various levels, it is to give a chance. And actually the country and whoever believes in this democracy, whatever, should be grateful to Dalits. And should thank every day for making sure that they are not going to the same extent which they should have gone by now. 3,000 year plus or 2,005 year plus. Still remain the slaves of the society. And yet trying to have a dialogue. And I think that's the beauty of a Dalit existence. I call Dalit being. Being a Dalit is to not only challenge the status quo, but also making sure the next day will be of not only for themselves, but for everyone else. It is a participation. Or else they would have asked for a separate nation long ago. But they are still hoping into these values. And if you are pushing humanity to the last extent, I think it is going to be a very difficult context. So I think to answer your question, I had to give this background, is that nation is yet a very complicated philosophy. Because nation just makes two things very critical. One is citizenship, which is belonging, and two is non-belonging basically. So Dalits are already not belonging, and Dalits already don't have citizenship. And yet the national focus remains. And I think this is where we need to, diversify. And I think one needs to really look through. Well, Ambedkar writes about nationalism very extensively, and he says, I don't have motherland. I mean, Gandhi, he says to Gandhi is like, you are a great nationalist. Or he says, okay, thank you, but I don't have motherland. What are you talking about? I'm disenfranchised in this country. I don't have right to vote. You have given right to Sikhs, you have given right to Muslims, and you take right they're given to me. So that's the debate where Gandhi is constantly trying to make sure untouchables are part of his project. The day untouchables will give up, Gandhi will go where? Gandhi will show tokenism by employing or having one or two Balmiki or Dalits cleaning the toilets in his ashram. But he can't have entire Dalit population to this. And I think that's the success of Ambedkar. That made sure that his promises were kept. In return, did they keep their promise? Is a question of debate. They have not. I'll just give you a brief example on the reservation, if I understood you correctly. One of the things I see a failure of Pariyar politics in Tamil Nadu is first of all, he was dead against the whole religious dogmatism. Yet in Chennai or any other place, every second corner there is temple. And there is still hegemony of unquestioned, How do I channel this dialogue, especially in the Pariyar's land? Now, Pariyar becomes an excuse for any other oppressive, and it's easy for the dominant caste to appropriate Pariyar. But Pariyar cannot be appropriated. Because he's then again telling you on your face what is it, the way it has to be told. And I think that's why what they did was they created this other non-dominant caste OBC politics, right wing, the RSS and the BJP has done very effectively. They strengthen this, and that's how they have done in Dalits as well as that. I think it is about time we also go to Brahmins and create their own subcaste politics, because there are 550 subcastes among Brahmin groups. Yet we never know about them. There is a huge fight amongst them. Why don't we pay attention to that part? And I think it is upon the failure, because they are making us engage totally in a different project altogether. And to answer your question, see, one of the things with reservation is that it has becoming, I've told anyone, it has become a neutralizing factor to many other operations. It is a good scheme and it is necessary. But what the oppressor has done is it has used it as an excuse to make sure that they continue to repeat the crimes and atrocities upon the communities who are not part of this. Now, if you have to be a reservation holder, you need to be a person who has a degree, for example, or whatever kind of qualifications we name, whatever level we may call. The people who are unable to even access that, the 95% of the population, which is, I think that's the main concern here. So for me, if I have to talk about the Dalit rights, I will rather talk about, land, I will talk about education where privatization is not there, universal education. I will talk about the healthcare, which is equal access to healthcare. And again, and I will also make sure that the temples remain accounted almost every month and their wealth, continues to be redistributed. And I will try to subtract the agency and hegemony of Brahmins in every other sectors by bringing more diversity into that chain. And let's see how it works.
That's exactly the point I wanted to make. I don't know if you're aware of it, but in Tamil Nadu, for instance, they have universities where anybody can do any studies and become a Dalit priest.
Mm-hmm.
And do you see that as an appropriation of the Dalit identity? Because there are many Dalits who are getting into the stream and...
Dalits are actually priests also. Various subcastes have their own subcaste priests.
But these are, in temples where the Dalits would not have been allowed entry.
Okay.
So this and then two.
Yeah.
My name is Sanjeev. Thanks for this talk. So you spoke a lot about Dalit experience. So I'm wondering if you could lay out your arguments about an ethical project to confront various systems of oppression, including casteism, neoliberal capitalism, religious fundamentalism, based on situated knowledge drawn upon Dalit collectives across the world. So that's my first question. The second question you have answered partially as a response to the first question. So I'm very fascinated and curious about your concept of Dalit love. So could you lay out the tenets of Dalit love as an ethical project to confront or to, say, forge empathy, global solidarities and some sort of a radical humanism or humanitarian.
Yeah, you can take, yeah. Yeah, sure.
Hi, Suraj. I'm Sasha.
Hi, Sasha.
Thank you so much for this compelling call to action. You briefly alluded to sort of the gendered components of thinking about anti-caste frameworks. First was through your conversation about marriage and endogamy, and second is the kind of way that you critique this idea of the carnival of coalition, in which kind of caste becomes this tokenist way in which we approach solidarity. And so I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about the history of sexuality and kind of the ways that the Dalit world has become this masculine space. So where do women kind of figure in the conversation around anti-casteism, and then also sort of Ambedkar is seen as this feminist thinker, and sort of how do we read the new framework that you are calling for through a language of feminism? Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. I'll go with the order. And this is actually one of the, I think it is where the Dalit community needs to acknowledge their own shortcomings, where the de-Brahmanization begins also first by, attacking the gender dominance that exists, And so when people are saying you have to fight against caste, what are you fighting against? One of the thing primary is fighting against the sexist norms that operate in society, because that's where caste finds its legitimacy. And so people across the caste, basically, when they talk about Dalit rights and all, the adequate Dalit women agency is not very much present. But that doesn't mean Dalit women are absent. Dalit women are very formidable and strong, and they are there. They are very radical, and they will put person like me or anyone else into the place. And so, thank you. And so, where do I or how do I approach this topic? Especially through the sexuality lenses, right? It goes two ways. First is the kind of what Ambedkar also picked up from Gabriel Tart, the idea of imitation. You try to imitate from the dominants amongst you. So you want to be like the next person who is dominating, because that's the only world you know. And I think this is because of lack of world experiences, right? Lack of, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get the Dalits, interact with the rest of the world, so they know what's happening around the world. Doesn't mean they are cognizant of it, right? The very evidence of having, Dalit women, fiery Dalit women operating in our societies. But that need not be only tokenized form. It needs to be a genuine kind of central leadership. And I think that's BAMSEF and BSP tried to do it very effectively, right? One woman at the helm of everything. Thank you, Akhil. And then challenging the discourses of heteronormativity, because, and it's heteropatriarchal basically, where lack of anti-caste consciousness brings that into you, because your immediate struggles are so pertinent, and it is where the Dalit community as well as others, if you have to give a model of something anti-caste, you have to give a model that is not existing in the Brahminic world, which is it has to be gender sensitive, it has to be trans sensitive as well as LGBTIQ sensitive, and that doesn't mean only by mere demonstration of certain figures, but actually it has to be a constant struggle. So if I am to show that Dalit world is doing these things, what is different I'm showing from these? What is not existing here? So this is a patriarchal space. This is a highly misogynistic space. This is a very crass space. So I have to subvert that, and this is what has operating. And historically, especially if you talk about the various Dalit societies, it has been a matriarchal society. The moment it hits the Hindu thinking or the pantheons of various thinking, it tries to become patriarchal in its nature. But if you go to Tamil Nadu and all other societies, the woman character features as a very very interesting kind of. And I think the next person, if you have to find out who will take the mantle forward, needs to be a woman from the Dalit community. And doesn't mean it has to only be woman or it has to only be the project of a woman, but we have to understand the nuances that a woman's agency will bring to this. And how do we do that? And I think this has to do with both sides, where there has to be sensitization. But what has happened recently in various experiences is the idea of gender has become very much like a NGOized notion. And so many NGOs, for example, have used or have contested in a good way actually, they talked about the importance of gender. But at the same time what they did was they were trying to not go through the social movement perspective, not understanding how the social movement realities are there on the ground. If you talk or if you import through certain experiences of, let's say, NGO-based women activism or NGO-based certain activism, and Dalit activism too, it really has a very limited goal. It only talks about representation. It only talks about filling the blanks. And I think that is important, but that is not complete. That will only, help you to make me feel good that, I have one woman on the stage now. But that will not, and I think that has the work of social movements where they subvert the patriarchal order. And by doing that, not only means getting a woman, but also making sure that more and more male patriarchal sensibilities kind of decrease. And I think that will only happen when we try to embrace the wholesome logic of how you look at this issue. Sanjeev, thank you for that question. You see, one of the, I was thinking about this issue, how to talk about, these confluences of capitalism and, the neoliberal order and caste and one has to be self-reflexive to answer this question. And if we lose the capacity to be self-reflective, that is a central tenet of the pragmatists. That is a central tenet of what Ambedkar's thinking is. It has to be self-reflective. Self-reflective only brings through the various conditions that are offered to you to be self-reflective. Now here you are not only, you're not having the space to be self-reflective. Whatever you are doing, you are actually self-critical. Because the society is telling that you are not deserving it, or you have done something wrong, or you have corrupted. So instead of being self-reflective for the entire growth, you become self-critical, and that self-criticism doesn't remain to yourself. It becomes self-demonization, and one has to draw a very serious line into that. And when you self-demonize, you become the criminal of the society. Even though nobody is making you criminal, you become part of that. And I think it is where the the idea of Dalit love becomes very important. I think people have not embraced fully the nectar of Dalit love. Why are Dalits still loving? They have no reason to love others. Give me one good reason. Why should they love a other dominant oppressor caste person? I can't find. You can talk about the ethical, moral project of it. We are all, human beings and all. On what cost? On 2 Dalit dead bodies every day? It cannot be a project. So there is something crucial that is happening here. And I think the world needs to pay attention to the world's oldest surviving discrimination happening on such a large scale. Crime against an entire humanity every day taking place at, the watch of the world media and everything. Yet, Dalits remain resilient. In their love, they are resilient. But also, their love is not about the romantic, cheap market love. It is actually destroying the market-oriented notions of love. It is something else. It is beyond the human blood relations. It repeatedly tells you it's a spiritual experience. It believes in your ancestral, whatever they bequeath about you. If Dalits are loving, that means they are still reminiscing. They are still living in the thoughts of their ancestors, the great people, about whom we really know nothing about, who lived for so long, yet their history doesn't become part of the conversation. Every time they make sure when the Dalit is practicing a love, and when I say a Dalit being equates Dalit love, being a Dalit is to love other person. You are still trying to find agency in other person. You are still trying to find the human. There is a demon in this oppressor, but you make sure you are still trying to find that there is a human still, and I will make sure that the human capacities of this person will come forward. The demon has brought because they have kissed the Brahminical order. And I think because of this very thin line, and I think you asked very right question about the ethical project of this, I think this is an ethical project. And within ethic, it is not about the ethic of a ruling class, which talks about retaining of a status quo, but it's actually subverting. And that ethic is a very crucial ethic, because it is not only radical, but it is revolutionary, because it is going to change. And it has happened. You see, in one generation, Dalits could achieve so much. If they would be a hating people, they would have ended up only hating and not concentrate on doing something more creative, more productive, more scientific. They found various reasons to thrive, to survive, to grow, to nurture, as well as love. And people take Dalit existence for granted. They think they are just surviving. No, I think they are giving opportunity to the rest of the humanity to survive with them. It's a cohabitation space. It's not an apartheid. That's why the whole notion of the idea of nation becomes very crucial in this. Why? One question is, why love a Dalit? Because caste system operates on hating a Dalit. There is only hatred. You don't know how the other person is. You have not even managed to talk on a human level. There is no fraternity, what Ambedkar calls fraternity, friendship. There is no companionship. As a fellow human being, sir, let's talk about this. You are hating it because you know Dalits will still love you. The power of Dalit love prevails on this. And you know why are you hating them? Because your ancestor did not taught you anything else. What else is the other reason that you're hating this vulnerable, poor, poverty-ridden people? Who don't have anything to do, who are not going to oppress you, who are not killing you, who are merely being your workers, but still you hate. It's upon your ancestors who did all the atrocities and did not tell you the truth of human values. Dalits are teaching humanity to rest of the India. They are schooling every day, even without going to schools. And why love a Dalit? Because that's where your insecure self will get a refuge. Caste system has made us insecure. So much so that we don't want to acknowledge the existence of other person as someone who exists. We even look past Dalits as if they don't exist. Why love a Dalit? Because Dalit will make sure that you are also valued in your own eyes. When I'm oppressing other person, I am actually declaring myself as a monster. Why? What other reason do I have to oppress other person? There is a monstrous tendency in me. I have killed the human in me, thanks to my ancestors. But Dalits are still retaining that. And it's not a romantic conception, it is in action, it is an everyday reality. You see various democratic protests carried out by Dalits. That is a chance. You see, even in their refusal to go down to the hegemonic order, to the oppressive order, when you are refusing, you are still loving. Because when you are refusing democratically. You are not refusing by blowing up the bridge. You are not just refusing by cleaning up all the relations. You are making sure that this dialogue remains. And I think whatever Socratic tradition we had about arguments and debate, Dalits have been existing and exercising this. Even without knowing about their own ancestors, without even knowing about their own people, they still have inherited something very crucial. Which is not only to teach your own children how to love, but also telling them, tell people who are saying how not to love, how to love.
We'll end there. Can we thank Dr. Yengde?
Thank you.
So there are more events happening with Dr. Yengde while he's here in BC.
We've been having these events for the last number of years. And again, it's built on some of the concepts Suraj has mentioned. One is about acknowledging and appreciating the work that is happening, regardless who or what community the person is from, right? It's to build those bridges, reach out to diverse movements. So we have 4 categories, and we're going to be recognizing change, what we're calling change champions. And we would like to extend our invitation to all of you to join us. And then also I would like to share my appreciation and acknowledgement to Brother Suraj for coming here and having this wonderful and lively presentation and great questions. You know, I must say this has been really encouraging to me. I want to also acknowledge Dr. Murphy and Dr. Schneiderman and others from UBC for partnering with us. You know, as well as with Samir Ganesha, Dr. Samir Ganesha, who has played a critical role from Simon Fraser University. And this year we have a new partnership with Quantum Polytechnic University. And I want to really say thanks. Brother Suri, you mentioned that in terms of creating and strengthening matriarchal relationships and the need for the Dalit organizations to give the space to women. Right, and I just want to acknowledge Anita for teaching us the value of what you have just said. Beautiful. Because the forum, the idea of creating a forum rather than a lecture, it was her idea. Beautiful. And give a round of applause. And the reason I wanted to say that is, when you look at the Facebook comments and posting, about 90% of the responses are from women, beautiful. Right? And she's been able to reach out to the younger population. We talk about caste. We talk about how we believe youngsters are being impacted, but we were not able to reach out to them. And it's by Anita providing that leadership, I think we have succeeded. So our thanks to Anita and all of our partners, and I just wanted to share our appreciation. Thank you.
If you'd like to get our mailing list, please sign up, and I hope we'll see you again. And thank you again to Chetna Association. Thank you to Dr. Yengde for sharing his wisdom with us, and thanks for coming. Good night.